Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Just got back from the theater. Went and saw The Boogeyman, based on a Stephen King short story that I've never read. I'm a big fan of Stephen King's. He actually is the one that made me love storytelling at all, loved horror movies. Actually, no, that's not true. I would say Freddy Krueger made me love horror movies. But Stephen King made me love the written word. That's for sure. I remember being 14 and reading it for the first time, just like staying home during the summer, chilling out in my room and reading it and falling in love, like with the ability for stories to just completely capture your imagination and the way that he would just tell this story in this like fever pitch. And it was so wonderfully detailed and just completely captured my imagination. I was hooked. And I remember starting to write short stories shortly thereafter. Yeah, it was cool. I owe a lot to Stephen King. I even have a Pennywise tattoo on my arm. Well, anyway, so this was a short story of his that I've never read. I don't read a lot of modern Stephen King. I'm kind of prefer his cocaine binged novels like The Shining and The Stand and It and most of his earlier work that I find far more passionate and in depth. Not that I'm not glad that he's sober or whatever, found some semblance of peace and I wish him all the best. I just haven't been big into his later works. Not that they aren't great. I'm sure that they are. But anyway, so yeah, this was based on that movie directed by Rob Savage, and he directed a show called Host. I don't really see much. Oh, he was the director of a show called Dash Cam. Nothing that looks like super like famous. I think Dash Cam's the one I heard of the most recently in terms of being creative. I would say like my favorite thing about this show or this movie was its scenes and the way that it put the scenes together and its camera work and its framing was really like inspired, and they did a really good job with light and dark and the different ways that light would pop and influence like the scene to get the monster to back the fuck off. At the end of the day, the movie was really just about grief, and unfelt grief and the way that, it's kind of as a metaphor, when you're not dealing with grief, it creates a sickness and, this monster kind of takes over one family and finds another and they're suffering because the mom in the family has died. And, the teenage daughter played by Sophie Thatcher, her name's Sadie in the movie. And then her dad, Will, played by Chris Messina, who is fantastic. He's really always interesting to watch. And then their Sophie's youngest sister, Sawyer, played by Vivian Lyra Blair. Really good child actress. I think sometimes kid actors can be kind of precocious and annoying. But she felt more or less natural. So it's basically kind of a paint by numbers monster flick. The monster's there. They have to hide from it. A lot of it felt like an endless series of jump scare setups. Again, cleverly done, but at the same time, still just an endless series of jump scare setups. By the end of the movie, I was just kind of like, can this be done? I'm kind of bored waiting for something to jump out at them or something to fill in the frame on the corner of their shoulder or, it became kind of redundant by the end of the movie. All the actors were game, the story overall was fine. So it wasn't something that I was super impressed by. I really feel like as an audience, we've seen this movie before. Lights Out is a great example of something that was done very similar recently. I did like the fact that it was a monster movie, and you don't get a lot of those anymore where it's a creature feature and we're dealing with this creature and what it's, doing to people. And, we don't learn much about where it comes from or why it's there other than to make life miserable and to feed off of people. And there were some really interesting scenes, especially at the end where its face kind of stretches out and these hands come out and you see this other face inside of the face. And, that was creative. And then something was coming out of her, and I don't know what that was supposed to symbolize. That was kind of confusing. I don't know if it was her pain, like it was feeding on her grief and pain. I don't think it was like her soul necessarily. It was a little strange, excuse me. So, yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was a serviceable film. Like, if I was to score it, which I haven't been doing, but why the fuck not? Okay, so if I was to score The Boogeyman, acting, as much as I liked Chris Messina as Will and even Sawyer, I thought Sophie's performance was okay at best. There were moments where I felt like her fear and even the child actor's fear felt kind of forced. I kept picturing them being like, oh God, I have to pretend to be scared again. Because it just, and then and even that with the storytelling, when this kind of stuff is happening, you would think that people would just stop what they're doing. You wouldn't necessarily go to school. You wouldn't, you know what I mean? Like, if there's a real supernatural monster hunting you, life kind of stops, and it should stop, and you should be far more hysterical, or I don't know, something than what it was that was going on with these characters. And I know you kind of want to build suspense, and so you kind of have to keep their regular lives going, but that doesn't match reality, or at least I think what people would normally do in these kinds of awful situations. So I'd say the acting was okay. I'd give it a 3. Writing and script, okay. I'd give it a 3. Score and sound, I thought it did really well in terms of using, the light popping and the different thudding of the hearts and the way that they made the monster creak along the walls and on the floor. And, so I'd give the sound, I thought that was really well done for a creature feature. So I give that a 5. Set design, cinematography, editing, I thought that was really well done too. I think the framing and the way that they moved things along was good. I'd give that a 4. So with that said, so if we had a 3 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, divide that by 4. So that's a 3.75 for directing. So 3.75 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5. Divide that by 5 to get our average, 3.75. Cool. All right, so this would be a C+. So we're going to go ahead and give The Boogeyman a C+. Again, not the best, but also definitely not the worst. It is a fun creature feature, jump scare. I would recommend seeing it. I am curious now to read the short story by one Mr. Stephen King. Love ya. Can't wait to visit Maine someday. It's on my bucket list. And hope you're having a beautiful day. Peace.